Channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And this morning, one thing we can say for sure, the Western countries, the allies of Ukraine from the European Union, were completely shocked with Russian massive missile and drone strike that took place yesterday in the territory of the city of Kiev. For example, the German chancellor stated that it is now obvious there will not be a meeting between President Zelensky and President Putin. Another important statement made by him that Russia has shown its true face. Now, everybody in the world, and especially the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, understand that most likely the special military operation will continue not just in the final part, last part of 2025, but most likely the next year we're going to see the war as well. Now let's move to Ukraine and let's discuss a few more updates that were published about the situation with missile strike. Today we got this video where we can see how another military facility was destroyed by the Russians. So one building, one factory was completely damaged and destroyed by the Russian forces. You know that, once again, I would like to remind you that that attack that was carried out by the Russians yesterday was a special attack, because according to information we have, the Russians, for the first time since the beginning of the special military operation, attacked not just military objects and military facilities. The Russians attacked buildings and offices of different embassies that are located on the territory of Ukraine. This morning we got report that the Russians attacked buildings, offices that belonged to the European Union, to the United Kingdom, and to Azerbaijan, which is very important, which means that during the next stages of the special military operation, the Russians will intensify their attacks on the facilities, buildings, and offices, at least of these countries and these organizations. Now let's move further. Of course, Ukrainians strike back, but when talking about Ukrainian step, according to information we have, the Ukrainian government has reportedly officially determined that the Ukrainian Orthodox Church is directly affiliated with the Russian Orthodox Church, thereby allegedly providing the Ukrainian government with a so-called legal basis on which a full ban of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church in Ukraine. So as we can see, the Ukrainians decided to attack church. The Russians attacked military facilities, Ukraine attacked church that's affiliated with the Russian Federation. And I would like to remind you that one of the most important demands of Putin was to give the Ukrainian Orthodox Church to work freely on the territory of Ukraine without any problems and any barriers from Ukrainian government. So now we see that's most likely this will never happen, at least until the end of the special military operation. Furthermore, we got a very interesting article published by Sky News. Russia's attack on Ukraine today is the second largest since the war began. Russia has broken its own record for the number of missiles and drones launched in a single night several times in recent months. A total of 598 drones and 31 missiles were launched into Ukraine overnight, second only to the July 9 raids, which involved 741 strike vehicles. So the biggest attack, and most likely the next days and the next stage of the special military operation, we're going to see lots of nights like that one. Now let's discuss a few more interesting updates, and now let's move to the Black Sea. We believe that the Black Sea is going to be a very important battlefield of the end of 2025 and most likely during the entire 2026. Today, pro-Russian resources published a video how exactly they destroyed Ukrainian ship in the area of the river of Danube. So here we can see Ukrainian ship with very poor quality. This video was published by the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, and then we can see an explosion. So of course, from this angle, it's very difficult to understand what exactly was damaged and destroyed, but later, additional pro-Russian resource published a bit more detailed video. And here we can see the first person view from the drone that attacked Ukrainian ship. As you can see, Ukrainian ship, Ukrainian soldiers that were moving, that were walking on the ship without being afraid of any danger, of any risk, risk of any threats from the river, and then the Russians attacked the ship, and the ship was destroyed. The thing is that the Russians destroyed one of the biggest ships that Ukrainian Navy has. The Ukrainians basically doesn't have something bigger, but obviously if they had, the Russians would attack this as well. So, which means that the Russians began the process of restoring their influence and their superiority in the Black Sea. We're going to see lots of videos from this area. The Russians most likely will try to block the Black Sea, and they will try to stop the trade with Ukraine in coming months. Sea trade. Another important video we got from the Zaporizhzhia direction. So the Russians published this video where we can see very rare and unique launching system, rocket launching system of the armored forces of Ukraine that can launch Neptune missiles. Very powerful missiles. According to information we have, Ukrainians in 2022 used this missile of Neptune type to attack Russian, let's say, Moscow ship in the Black Sea. And this time the Ukrainians were using this ship to attack probably deep inside of the territory of the Russian Federation, of its southern part. But the Russians discovered this launching system and attacked this area with Iskander missile. And the system was completely damaged and destroyed with probably a cluster munition. So very important video and very unique launching system of the armored forces of Ukraine, as we can see, was destroyed. Now let's move to the ground. We have very important updates, and first let's continue our conversation about the Zaporizhzhia direction. During the previous 24 hours, additional changes on the ground were recorded, not big one, but very important. For example, this is the situation by the end of the 28th of August of 2025, and this is the situation by the beginning of the 29th. The Russians are moving from the village of Novopol through the fields in the direction of Novoivanovka, and the Russians tightened the news around the settlement of Kamyshevacha by moving in the direction of the settlement from the area of the village of Malievka. A bit further in the western direction, several FAB explosions were recorded. Most likely the Ukrainians were trying to concentrate their forces to organize counter-offensive operation, but most likely their plans were ruined. Very interesting updates are coming from the settlements of Novoselovka. Today, pro-Ukrainian resources made adjustments on their maps, but we haven't managed to add them because we started making this video, but we will discuss this during the, let's say, evening update. But the pro-Ukrainians are saying that the Russians managed to break through the settlement advance of Ukraine in the area of Novoselka and to answer the territory of the settlement. Furthermore, pro-Ukrainian resources show that some streets and some buildings of the village of Novoselka are already under complete Russian control. Furthermore, they're saying that the territory between the village of Novoselka and Varskaya are the gray zone or contested area. So we believe that in coming days, the Russians will secure this territory, will take under complete control the village of Novoselka. Then most likely the Russians may try to cross the river of Volcha, and they will try to move through this forest in the direction of Velika Mikhailovka. Because if Russians can take Velika Mikhailovka under complete control, they will be able to begin concentration of their units and forces for further offensive operation in the western direction. Velika Mikhailovka is a very big village, the biggest village probably in this direction after the settlement of Velika Novoselovka. Now let's move further. And let's discuss the situation in the Pokrovsk direction. During the previous 24 hours, different mappers adjusted their maps, especially pro-Ukrainian resources, regarding the situation in the southwestern part of the Pokrovsk agglomeration. According to pro-Ukrainian sources, the Russians managed to improve their positions in the area of the settlement of Zverova. The village itself, and as well as the village of Levantovichi, are marked and colored as a gray zone, according to pro-Ukrainian resources. But I would like to remind you that the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported about control over these territories a long time ago. Furthermore, pro-Ukrainian resources published another video from the most southern part of the city of Pokrovsk, where we can see how units of Ukrainian 155th Mechanized Brigade were FPV droning Russians in the southern part. This is another video that confirms Russian control at least over this part of the city. So the Russians we see are advancing and advancing and advancing. I would like to remind you that during the previous days, lots of pro-Ukrainian and neutral mappers reported that Ukrainians counterattacked and carried out another counter-offensive operation in the area between the settlements of Novoekonomichne, Mykolaiivka and Mirolyubovka. And as a result of this counterattack, the Ukrainians managed to get the villages of Mirne and Malinovka. So this is what was posted, has been posted probably since the beginning of the previous week. Later we got reports that the Russians counterattacked and managed to restore control over these territories. We didn't make any adjustments on map because we didn't have anything that can confirm this progress, just talks and rumors. But today, pro-Russian resources published a very interesting video from the most southern part of Novoekonomichne. So in this video we can see how 3 Ukrainian stormtroopers were crossing the street in the southern part of the settlement. We will not continue with this video because later the Russians attacked this territory with artillery. And in this video we can see the same street, and this building was captured by Ukrainian stormtroopers, but then this building was damaged and destroyed by a Russian drone. So this video confirms that indeed the Ukrainians managed to counterattack and that Ukrainians managed to enter the settlement of Novoekonomichne from the south, but the Russians are saying that by the morning of the 29th of August, these units of the armed forces of Ukraine were completely defeated and were forced to fall back. So as for now, we are not going to change anything in Russian favor. We are waiting for additional updates, videos, and something like this. Now let's move further. As for the city of Konstantinovka, during the previous 24 hours, nothing special was recorded. The only important video is that the Russians shown how they managed to discover the temporary deployment point of the 92nd Mechanized Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine that was later destroyed with FAB 3000. As for the Sivas direction, here we can see the same story as we saw yesterday, the day before yesterday, and months ago. The Russians are bombing and attacking positions of the armed forces of Ukraine all over the entire Sivas direction with artillery and with drones. There are lots of FPV drone equipment, lots of communication equipment that the Russians are trying to destroy before the beginning of a major offensive operation in this area. But when talking about the Liman direction, during the previous 24 hours, very important changes were recorded. First of all, the Russians continued their offensive operation and secured completely the village of Serednya. This information was confirmed by neutral mappers and by pro-Russian resources once again. The Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported about control over Serednya a long time ago. Now I believe that everything is ready to begin a final battle for the settlement of Shandrigolova. Furthermore, pro-Russian resources reported that as a result of clashes, the settlement by the name of Glushenkovo was taken and secured by the Russians completely. Furthermore, the sources are saying that the armed forces of the Russian Federation began advancing in the direction of the settlements of Andreevka and in the direction of the village by the name of Maliivka. First of all, we're not talking about a regular army of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, we are talking about sabotage and reconnaissance group. But this is very dangerous advancement on the ground, because if Russians somehow managed to break through this direction and to take under control these territories, this can lead to complete collapse of the entire defense of the Barova direction. And this is, it seems, the Russians are trying to do. The Russians resumed their attacks in this area after the units of the 3rd Storm Assault Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine was exhausted during the previous counterattacks. Ukrainians launched their counter-offensive operation in this area several weeks ago, and mainly the Ukrainians involved 3rd Assault Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine for those purposes. But during the previous 3 weeks, this brigade was completely exhausted by clashes along the line of combat contact, and when the Russians realized that Ukrainians are no longer able to continue offensive, they began their own counter-offensive or another stage of offensive operation, this time in the direction of the city by the name of Barova. The Russians restored control over Novomikhalovka. During this video we might see how Russians raised their flag on the farms to the north of the settlement, and furthermore the Russians restored control over the village of Grekovka. We have another video that confirms Russian counter-attack in this area. So based on these 2 videos we made several adjustments. So we see that the situation is very interesting, becomes very interesting in the Barova direction. The Russians may try to intensify their activities in coming days. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes on my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.